Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Joffrey Noodle Legs here again today with another top 10. Today it's another music top 10. Today I'm going through my top 10 favourite David Bowie albums. I've been a fan of David Bowie now for many years. The first record I ever bought, I was about 7 or 8, and I bought the single of Rebel Rebel uh, from Boots for about 29p. This was about 1975, something like that, 76. That was the first record I ever bought. I'd never heard it. I just liked the cover. And I took it home and I just loved it. And I played it and played it and played it and drew my parents around the twist. And then they ended up buying me a David Bowie record for my birthday. And I was only about 7 or 8. I think they bought me Diamond Dogs. But yeah, I just absolutely loved it. I just thought it's fantastic. And I've been a David Bowie fan since. I've seen him about 5 times. The first time I saw him was on the Serious Moonlight tour, which was the tour that he did with Let's Dance, the album. That's not in my top 10. Not many of his 80s albums are in my top 10. Not for no reason. They're good albums, just that they're not my sort of favourites. His sound changed. It got more commercially successful, and they weren't as good as I think as the albums that I liked. But there's some corkers in there. So let's not waste any time. I've got a few honourable mentions. First of all, it's one of his really early albums, and it's this one. It's The Man That Sold the World. It's a fantastic album. It's like got some songs that are like really sort of progressive rock, and it's like some songs like The Width of a Circle, which is like 12 minutes long or something ridiculous like that. Nobody did that back then, but he wasn't afraid to do that. Obviously, he did albums before this. He did Space Oddity, and he did these with his other band with the Marsh Boys. He did a few other sort of funny sort of albums with some his sort of really 60s sounding songs like the Laughing Gnome and that. But that was one of his sort of like first sort of progressive rock albums, and it's a really good album. Another honourable mention is a live album called the Serious Moonlight Tour. Again, this is in there because this was the first tour that I saw him, so it's got a lot of memories for me. I haven't even opened this. I've got 2 copies. I'm a bit crazy when it comes to Bowie. I tend to buy 2 copies, one to listen to and one to keep. Don't know. Don't ask me why. I just do. So I've still, and it was such a good tour. Although it's got quite a few songs from Let's Dance. Again, it's a good album. Modern Love is a great track. But I preferred his more sort of 70s and 60s stuff. So that's an honourable mention. Couple more honourable mentions. Experts from Outside. This is one of his latter ones. This is really, really good album. When he recorded this, he was sort of became close friends with Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, and I think they do a couple of songs on there together. And they went out on tour together in America. That would have been amazing, wouldn't it? David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails. Unfortunately, it never came over here. I'd have been first in the queue for that. But yeah, that's a really good album, good experimental album. Another really good album of his is called Hours. Another honourable mention. Again, it doesn't get a lot of love or anything. Again, because it was his post. He sort of not fell out of love with it. I think his music was, a lot of people think it's of its time, and so when he started making albums a bit later in the sort of 90s and the early 2000s, they were not as commercially successful as his earlier albums, and I think that's criminal because there's some great albums and this is one of them. And I don't understand how it's like how it's like how I know how the world changes and it's a different people buying music then than it was now. So a lot of people don't want to know David Bowie, but it's criminal that so many great albums are sort of missed off because of, I don't know, not loss of popularity. I mean, his tour store was sold out. I saw him on the reality tour and that was a sellout and that was fantastic. But yeah, it's crazy. Let's not waste any more time. I'm just absolutely rabbiting. Go on to my top 10 favourite David Bowie albums. Okay, number 10. I have to show you the back of it because the front, you wouldn't know. Anyway, number 10 is Lodger. This was, I think, 1979. So that's the front cover. Okay, so yeah, and so yeah, what a fantastic album. Really, really cool. There we go. Really good album. Again, it's one of his albums that came out just before he hit the real sort of big time with Scary Monsters and Super Creeps and Let's Dance. Before those sort of albums come out, and he started having the hit single. He had hit singles in the 70s, but again, he sort of died down a bit because it became more experimental. People don't like that. They don't like to change so much, but he's not afraid of doing that. So he sort of became not less popular, but didn't release sort of like the crowd pleasers, if you like, until Scary Monsters come out and he started releasing things like Up the Hill Backwards and Ashes to Ashes and that. But before that was Lodger. We had a couple of singles on here. I think Boys Keep Swinging was a single, I believe. That's on here. Really good album. And number 9. Number 10 is one of his most famous ones, and it's the one that I've got as my tattoo, and that's Aladdin Sane, or Aladdin San, whatever you want to call it. Good album. It's a very contemporary album is the word I look for it. There's a lot of sort of songs were a little bit out of tune, a little bit out of key, and that was purposely. And I just worked because it's supposed to be insane. So, you know, and that's what he tried to portray over in here. Again, it's one of his most famous sort of album artworks. That's the gatefold sleeve. These are from the box sets that came out, and they contain the original artwork. So it's got the original gatefold sleeve, and fantastic. Aladdin Sane is a really good album. Number 9. Number 8 is a live album, and this was not an official release. It is now, but it was a bootleg back in the day. But it was such a good sounding bootleg. They actually, the record company got a copy of it, and they actually released it and sort of remastered the sound and released it as a proper album. And this is a live at Santa Monica in '72. Really, really good album. Fantastic live album. It's just got so many great songs on it. Really, really cool. Absolutely love this song. It's got things like Gene Genie, Suffragist City, you know, all those sort of classic Bowie songs are on there. Plus, it's got some sort of obscure stuff on there, like Waiting for the Man, which is a Velvet Underground song. So it's a really good live album. If you've not heard this, it's worth checking out. I think you can buy it. It's normally quite reasonably cheap for about £5 or something. But it's a really good album. That was number 8, I believe. Number 7 is one from his experimental times in the 70s when he went to Berlin with Iggy Pop and he released Heroes. Obviously, it's got the famous song Heroes on there. This was a lot more sort of electronic and a lot more experimental. It's got some great tracks on it, like Beauty and the Beast and things like this. But again, it's from that period where he just went off on one, if you like, and just did what he wanted to do because he could, because he's David Bowie. He reinvents himself. I mean, he was Aladdin Sane, wasn't he? And then he was Ziggy Stardust. He was played all these different characters, so he could reinvent himself. And he did a couple of albums in the Berlin period, which were amazing. And this is one of them. This is Heroes. Really cool. Number 7. Number 6, another one from that period, and that's Station to Station. This is a really excellent album. Very short album. It's only got 6 songs on it, and it's got a couple of singles on there, Golden Years and Wild as the Wind. Wild as the Wind, I think, is my favourite Bowie song of all time. So that's the reason why I love this. And I love the album cover. That's taken from David Bowie's movie that he was in, The Man Who Fell to Earth, which came out the same sort of time as these albums come out. Again, this is from his sort of experimental time. And so these have got like, some of it's quite electronic-y, and some of it's very sort of guitar sort of bass. It's a brilliant album. It's only 6 tracks, but it's all very varied. And this is the original, again, album. I love these because they even give you like the proper sort of the way the records looked, labels. Fantastic. Really good album. What am I up to now? my top 5. Number 5 is one of more of his later sort of albums, and this is called Heathen. Oh, what an album! It's fantastic. This is probably his most underrated album to date. It's brilliant. There's not a bad song on the album. It fits right in with his greatest albums, and again, it's just no one ever talked about it or anything, and I don't understand why. And he had such a cool image back then as well. It's so awesome. And again, I don't know why people never really got into this album, because to me, it's just one of the greatest albums ever made, and it's just fantastic. Heathen's my 5th favourite David Bowie album of all time. Number 4 is a live album. A live album? Yep, a live one. This is called Stages. Really great album. I love this album because it's live, but they sort of downplayed the audience sound in the background, so the audience wasn't so loud. It was more about the music, and I loved it. And this is from the 70s Berlin time, so a lot of the songs are from the albums from that period, from Station to Station, Heroes, etc. There's a few that like things like Hang On to Yourself and things like that in this on this album, but this was more about the songs from that sort of period, which was his Berlin sort of period. And to me, it's awesome because it's so different from his sort of glam rock years. He come from those sort of glam rock years with these albums like Pin-Ups and Aladdin Sane and Diamond Dogs, and it went into like it's almost like New Romantics before it was New Romantics. Fantastic. My 3rd favourite album of his is the last one from that period of the Berlin years, and this is the album Low. Again, I absolutely love this album, and a lot of it is instrumental. That's crazy, right? But the instrumentals are great too. But it's just such a compelling listen, and for its time, it was so advanced. When I bought this in the 70s, I'd never heard anything like it. I know a lot of people had heard from Kraftwerk and things like that, but I had not heard of Kraftwerk then. I had, later on, but when I bought this, I'd never heard of Kraftwerk, and this had a lot of electronic stuff in there. And again, it was with him and Iggy Pop sort of working together. Iggy Pop had just left his band, the Stooges, and they sort of worked together on these Berlin albums. And Low is my favourite of them all. A really good album. So we're down to the top 2. Number 2 is from his glam rock years, and it has to be Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. It's just amazing, isn't it? What an album. Way ahead of its time. It's got some of the best rock and roll ever on here. You got 5 Years, Suffragette City, Hang On to Yourself, Ziggy Stardust. There's just like song after song after song. Just brilliant. They do not make albums like that anymore. And look at that amazing cover. It's very Andy Warhol, right? I mean, it's just fantastic. What an amazing, amazing album. And talking of Andy Warhol, we get to my favourite David Bowie album, and it's Hunky Dory. I love this album, I really do. It's the 2nd album of his I've brought. I got brought Diamond Dogs for my birthday, and then I went out and bought this from my local record shop. Diamond Dogs was from Walworth. This is from my local independent store, and it cost me £3.99. And I absolutely fell in love with it, and I played this album so much. I wore it out. I really did. It was just so cool. This is like again the album he did after Man Who Sold the World. So it's a very early album, early 70s, late 60s. We're talking that period. It's quite a hippie sort of sounding album. It's got lots of sort of acoustic-y songs on there. And there's a tribute song to Bob Dylan on there. There's all sorts of things. And he does, it's just a fantastic album. That is my favourite David Bowie album. There we are. What are your favourite Bowie albums? Do you have any favourites I've left out? I mean, yeah, there's so many, isn't there? Pin-Ups was a good album. It's a covers album, but it was a good album. He's done some amazing albums. I left so many out just because you can only fit 10 in 10, can't you? There we are. That's my top 10. Anyway, guys, till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.